This is an article from The Atlantic. Donald Trump is losing his mind. The president is discussing martial law in the Oval Office as his grip on reality falters. Now, I know I keep talking about this particular subject, but to be honest with you, it needs to be talked about because, quite honestly, as more and day after day we see Donald Trump's grip on the White House being lost in January, he's going to get more and more dangerous. Let's just get that straight. And so are his supporters. Now, quoting from the article, Donald Trump's descent into madness continues. In the latest manifestation of this report, in a report in the New York Times, that the president is appointing the conspiracy theorist Sidney Powell, who for a time worked on his legal team, to be a special counsel to investigate imaginary claims of voter fraud. As if that weren't enough, we also learned that disgraced former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, who Donald Trump pardoned after pleading guilty to lying to the FBI, attended that meeting last week. Earlier in the week, Flynn floated the idea, which he had promoted before, that the president imposed martial law and deployed the military to rerun the election in several closely contested states that voted against him. It appears that Flynn wants to turn those battlegrounds on election states into literal battleground states, this time with guns. None of this should come as a surprise. Some of us has said, even before he became president, that Donald Trump's Rosetta Stone, the key to deciphering him, was his psychiatry. His disordered personality, his emotional instability, and his sociopathic tendencies. It was the main reason, through hardly the only reason, I refused to vote for him in 2016 and voted against him here in 2020, despite having worked in 3 previous Republican administrations. Nothing that Trump has done over the past 4 years has caused me to rethink my assessment, and a great deal has happened to confirm it. Given Trump's psychological profile, it was notable that when he felt the walls of reality close in on him in 2020, it was the pandemic, the cratering economy, and his election defeat, he would detach himself even further from reality. It was predictable that the president would assert even the more bizarre conspiracy theories. They would become more enraged and embittered and more desperate and more despondent, more consumed by his grievances. They would go against past supplicants like Attorney General Bill Barr and Georgia Governor Bill Kemp, and become more aggressive towards his perceived enemies. That his wits would begin to turn, in the words of King Lear. Now, the King Lear reference is obviously from Shakespeare's play King Lear. Basically, he's saying, the writer of this article is saying that Donald Trump's mindset is, I will have such a vengeance on you both, I will do such things, what they are, I yet know not what, but they shall be the terrors of the earth. That he would begin to lose his mind. And so he has. And as a result, Donald Trump has become even more destabilizing and dangerous. I've been covering Donald Trump for a while. Jonathan Swain of Axios tweeted, and I quote, I can't recall hearing more intense concern from senior officials who are actually Trump people. The Sidney Powell, Michael Flynn ideas are finding an enthusiastic audience at the top. Even amid the chaos, it's worth taking a step back to think about where we are. An American president, unwilling to concede his defeat, by 7 million popular votes and 74 electoral college votes, is trying to steal the election. It has become his obsession. In the process, Trump has too many cases is turned to his party into an instrument of illiberalism and nihilism. Here are just a couple of data points to underscore that claim. 18 attorney generals and more than half the Republicans in the House support a seditious abuse of the judicial process. Now, that term, seditious abuse, came from the Pennsylvania Attorney General. It's not only in even mainly elected officials. The Republican Party's base has often followed Trump into the twilight zone, with a sizable majority of them affirming that Joe Biden won the election based on fraud, and many of them turning against the medical science in the face of a surging pandemic. COVID-19 is now killing Americans at the rate of about 1 per minute, but the president is just done with COVID, a source identified as one of Trump's closest advisors told the Washington Post. I think he put it on the timetable and he's done with COVID. It's just exceeded the amount of time he gave it. This is where Trump's crippling psychology condition, his complete inability to face unpleasant facts, his toxic narcissism, and his utter lack of empathy became lethal. Trump's negligence turned what would have been a difficult winter into a dark one. If any of his predecessors, whether it be Barack Obama, George W. Bush, Bill Clinton, George H.W. Bush, or Ronald Reagan, just to go 40 years, had been president during this pandemic, tens of thousands of American lives would have already surely been saved. My concern was, in the worst part of the battle, the general was missing in action. These are the words of Maryland Governor Larry Hogan, one of the very few Republicans to speak the truth in the Trump era. In little under 30 days, Donald Trump will leave the presidency, with his efforts to mount a coup having failed. The encouraging news is that it never really had a chance of succeeding. Our institutions, especially the courts, will have passed a stress test, not for the most difficult, but the most difficult enough, and unlike any other in history. Some local officials exhibited profiles and courage, doing the right thing in the face of threats and pressure from their party. And a preponderance on the American public, having lived through the past 4 years, deserves credit for canceling this presidential freak show rather than renewing it. The exhausted majority wasn't too exhausted to get out and vote, even in the pandemic. But the Trump presidency will leave gaping wounds nearly everywhere and ruination in some places. Truth as a concept has been battered from the highest office on the land on an almost hourly basis. The Republican Party has been radicalized, with countless Republican lawmakers and other prominent figures within the party having revealed themselves to be moral cowards, even, and in some ways, especially after Trump was defeated. During the Trump presidency, they were so afraid of getting into his crosshairs with him and his supporters that they failed the Skolny tests. A simple act of ordinary brave men is not to partake in lies, not to support in false actions. His rule? Let that come into the world, even if it reigns supreme, only not through me. During the past 4 years, the right-wing ecosystem has become more and more rabid. Many prominent evangelical supporters of the president are either obsequious, like Franklin Graham, or delusional, like Eric Mextis, and now they peddle their delusions as being written by God. The QAnon and the Proud Boys, Newsmax, One American News, Alex Jones, and Tucker Carlson have all been emboldened. These worrisome trends began before Trump ran for office, and they won't disappear after he leaves the presidency. Those who hope for a quick snapback will be disappointed. Still, having Trump out of office has to help. He's going to find out that there's no comparable bully pulpit, and the media, if they're wise, will cut off his oxygen, which is attention. They have no choice but to cover Trump's proclivities when he was president. When he's an ex-president, that will change. For the foreseeable future, journalists will rightly focus on the pandemic. But once that is contained and defeated, it will be time to go back to focusing more attention on things like the Paris Accords and the carbon tax, the earned income tax credit and infrastructure, entitlement reform and monetary policy, charter schools and campus speech codes, legal immigration, asylum, assimilation, and social mobility. There is also an opportunity, with Trump as the former president, for the Republican Party to again become the home of sane conservatism. Whether that happens or not is an open question. But it's something many of us are willing to work for, and that even progressives should hope for. Beyond that, and more fundamentally than that, we have to remind ourselves that we are not powerless to shape the future, that much of what has been broken can be repaired, that though we are many, we can be one, and that fanaticism and cynicism are unwanted and corrosive. There's a lovely line in William Wordsworth's poem, The Prelude. What we have loved, others will love, and we will teach them how. There are still things worthy of love: honor, decency, courage, beauty, and truth. Tenderness, human empathy, and a sense of duty, good society, and a commitment to human dignity. We need to teach others in our own individual relationships, in our own classrooms and communities, in our book clubs and Bible studies, and innumerable other settings, why these things are worthy of their attention, their loyalty, and their love. One person doing it won't make much of a difference. A lot of people doing it, we create a culture. Maybe we understand better than we did 5 years ago why these things are essential to our lives, and why, when we neglect them or elect leaders who ridicule and subvert them, life becomes nasty, brutish, and generally unpleasant. Just after noon on January 20th, a new and necessary chapter will begin in the American story. Joe Biden will certainly play a role in shaping how that story turns out, but so will you and I. Ours is a good and estimable republic, if we can keep it. First, I want to thank Mr. Peter Winner for actually writing this. January 20th is coming. Nothing can stop it now. Our country will be healed. And for all of us out there who are trying to fight to heal it, we must continue that fight. Because let me tell you something, the Trumpers, and Donald Trump especially, will do everything they can to fight against us. CTP, know the truth. God bless. Peace to the left, justice to the right.